and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. And I'll pause just a second here. Heather, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and then can you please call roll?
The following board members are present at the District Administration Office. Gina Acevedo.
Here.
Scott Andreessen.
Here.
Natalie Copeland.
Here.
Zach Dorholt. Diana Fenton.
Here.
Shannon Hawes.
Here.
Heather Weems. The following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office. Superintendent Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of E5 Learning Nikki Hansen, Executive Director of Community Education and Community Partnerships Shannon Avenson, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Human Resources and General Counsel Tracy Flynn-Bowe, Executive Director of Innovation and Technology Services Katie Herbold, Executive Director of Operations Matthew Boucher, Executive Director of Special Education Danny Mayer, Media Technicians Paul Novak and Gordy Scott, and the custodian on site is Emerson Beamer.
Thank you. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's Board of Education meeting agenda.
So move.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Natalie. Heather, can you call vote?
Zach Dorholt, Natalie Copeland,
Yes.
Diana Fenton,
Yes.
Scott Andreessen,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Gina Acevedo, Heather Weems, yes.
Okay, and then we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items the board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of minutes for December 3rd, 2025 and December 17th, 2025 board meetings. Item B, approval of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $4,495,307.67. Item C, approval of personnel staff changes. Item D, acceptance of grant awards and donations. And item E, approval of quarterly expenditures for board members. Ms. Copeland has asked to remove item D. Does any other board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve items A, B, C, and E as read.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Heather, a second by Scott. Heather, can you call vote on that?
Heather Weems, yes. Scott Andreessen,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Zach Dorholt, Natalie Copeland,
Yes.
Diana Fenton,
Yes.
Gina Acevedo.
Okay, and then we have item D. Natalie is just recusing herself. So Heather, can you call vote with, or I need a motion to approve item D on the consent agenda?
So move.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Scott, a second by Heather. Heather, can you call vote except for Natalie?
Diana Fenton.
Yes.
Zach Dorholt, Gina Acevedo, Scott Andreessen,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Heather Weems, yes.
Okay, thank you. Then we're moving over to our discussion and action items. First up, we have an action item. It is the proposed resolution for censure of board member. And does everybody have a copy of it in front of you? This is so there's a copy of the proposed resolution in front of you. This is a governance item concerning board conduct under Board Policy 209. The purpose of this item is for the board to consider the resolution as written, and this is not a public hearing, this part of it, and I will read the resolution of censure out loud in the matter of conduct of a member of the school board. Whereas members of the school board serve as trustees of public education are entrusted by the community to conduct themselves in a manner that protects the integrity, stability, and effective operation of the school district. And whereas Board Policy 209 sets forth the ethical and professional standards expected of school board members, and whereas Board Policy 209B provides that in performing the proper functions of a school board member, each member shall consider myself a trustee of public education to do my best to protect, conserve, and advance its progress. And whereas Board Policy 209D4 provides that in meeting responsibilities to the community, each board member shall strive to uphold my responsibilities and accountability to the taxpayers in my school district. And whereas Board Policy 209F6 provides that in fulfilling legal obligations, each board member shall take no private action that will compromise the school board or administration. And whereas on or about January 9th, 2026, school board member Natalie Copeland made a public social media post regarding recent ICE enforcement actions in Minnesota containing profane and derogatory language directed toward public officials and members of the community. And whereas the use of profane, inflammatory, and derogatory language in a public forum by a member of the school board related to sensitive and political charged events that are directly impacting the school community constitutes conduct unbecoming of a school board member and is inconsistent with the standards of professionalism, judgment, and restraint expected of an elected official entrusted with the governance of a public school district. And whereas whereas the board member's public social media post on January 9, 2026 has caused significant concern and disruption within the school community, diverted administrative time and attention from the district's educational mission, and undermined public confidence in the school board's ability to govern in a respectful, inclusive, and professional manner. And whereas on or about January 12, 2026, school board member Copeland published a public apology regarding the post expressing her regret and committing to listening, learning, and serving our community with empathy and understanding. And whereas such conduct constitutes private action that has compromised the school board and the administration in violation of Board Policy 209F6. And whereas such conduct fails to reflect the responsibilities of a trustee of public education as required by Board Policy 209B. And whereas such conduct is inconsistent with the obligation to uphold accountability to the community and taxpayers as required by Board Policy 209D4. And whereas the school board recognizes that an individual board members retain their personal First Amendment rights, but also affirms that those rights do not absolve board members from the ethical and governance obligations they accept when serving in public office. Now therefore be it resolved, number one, that the school board hereby formally censures board member Copeland for conduct inconsistent with Board Policy 209 and the standards of conduct expected of a member of this board. Number two, that this censure serves as an official expression of the board's disapproval and a public reprimand for actions that have harmed the governance, operations, and public trust of the school district. Number three, that the school board reaffirms its commitment to civil discourse, respectful leadership, and governance focused on the education, safety, and well-being of all students and staff. And item 4, that the resolution shall be entered into the official minutes of the school board and made part of the district's public record. So before we proceed, I want to clarify, make a statement that the discussions, I'll ask for a motion in a second, but the discussions are limited to the contents of the resolution and the standards of Board Policy 209, that inflammatory statements or commentary to the broader public issues, specifically the ones that were mentioned in the social media post that's being referenced, that those topics are out of order. That is not what this agenda item is about and that we are discussing tonight. So I'm looking for, before I open it up to discussion, I'm looking for a motion and a second.
So moved.
I have a motion by Heather and a second by Diana, and then I'm going to give first the microphone to recognize Natalie Copeland first.
Thank you, Chair Haas. To my neighbors and to fellow school board members, Dr. Putnam and the cabinet, and anyone listening tonight. My goal, as always, is to raise awareness and lessen suffering in our community. With my now deleted social media post, I missed the mark and brought negative attention to those closest to me professionally and personally. Yes, I was speaking personally at the time, but I do recognize that Board Policy 209F6 instructs that I shall take no private action that will compromise the school board or administration. My statement compromised the board and administration and was harmful to the school community. For that, I am genuinely sorry, and I am committed to be more considerate in the future.
Anyone else have any other discussion? And as a reminder, we're not talking about the political issues, rather the resolution and Board Policy 209. Anybody? Scott? Anything else? Okay, seeing no further discussion, Heather, could you call vote? Please know that Natalie has chosen to abstain from the vote.
Zach Dorholt. Diana Fenton.
Yes.
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Heather Weems, yes. Gina Acevedo.
No.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes, it's too late for me to math tonight, 5-1. Yes? Okay,
511.
what's that?
511.
511, thank you. So this concludes the board's action on this matter. The resolution will be entered into the official minutes and be included in board book. We are now returning our focus to the work of the district and our students. We're moving on to our next action item, which is approval of the school calendars for 2026 to 2027 and 2027 to 2028 school years, and presented tonight by Matthew, and I'm going to forget how to pronounce your last name because I am really tired, Boucher?
Close.
Boucher.
Did you ever see the movie Waterboy? And you're good if you just recall that. So it's Boucher.
Boucher, Executive Director of Operations.
Yeah. Yeah. True story. My son went through all of high school never being called his first name. He was called either Bobby or the Waterboy. So we just grab the screens real quick. Superintendent Putnam Chair Haas and members of the board, I appreciate your time this evening for us to review the calendars for the next 2 years. As you know, and you're familiar, this is an annual process we go through to create the calendars early enough that school, parents, students can all make plans for the upcoming years. It's critical for us from an organizational perspective, but it's also really important for our families to have the information in a timely manner so they can also make plans. What is a little unique this year is we're going to talk about a 2-year calendar or a biennium calendar where we're going to look at the next 2 years, and there's factors that are influencing that. But as you know from previous years, the calendar, there is a calendar committee, and it's comprised of generally about 18 staff members from school staff to building administration to district staff. And many of which, I shouldn't say many, several of which are also parents in the district and represent that perspective as well. So that's the group that comes together over a series of meetings to come up with calendar prototypes and then bring to you today for your approval. Some unique factors that have influenced this biennium calendar that we're bringing to you are on the screen. First amongst them is Labor Day is falling in a rather late over the next 2 years. And that alone would drive the calendar into the second week of June, which has obvious ramifications. And so the Department of Education has allowed school districts to petition to start before Labor Day over the next 2 years. So that was one factor. But another factor that is local to us is that our community has approved a referendum to do a project at Apollo over the next 2 years. And so the construction of the Apollo projects, both of those approved referendums, will really take place over the next 2 years. And what we capture in the summer as far as work time is going to be really critical. So that was another factor that drove how we approach the calendar and an internal interest to start before Labor Day in support of those construction calendars. It was even more important in the second year for a couple very specific reasons relative to, quite frankly, having a kitchen open for students to feed them to starting the following year. Annually, there are certain things that influence this process that are somewhat fixed inputs in the process. They're there on the screen. Our number of instructional days, our number of workshop days, our school improvement staff development days, our conference days, and our contractually recognized holidays. So those fixed inputs, they're listed there, but there are always things that then we have to work with as we develop the calendar. And then our desired results as we asked this committee to wrestle with meeting these challenges was that the calendar reflect balanced trimesters as much as possible, that it reflects a consideration of student needs, and that reflect a consideration of staff wellness, a consideration of the faith traditions within our community, that it avoid extending trimester 2 beyond midwinter break, and that's really about not having an extra day or two, a weird leftover in a trimester that is often just very unproductive for learners and for staff. And then finally, to avoid going into the second week of June, and in the second year of this calendar, to even ideally not go into June and to have that entire month and the following 2 for construction time. So with that, you have received, and on the screen as well as in front of you are the next 2-year calendars. We feel that we met those desired outcomes. The committee met those desired outcomes fairly well in this calendar. As far as balanced days, in the first year of the biennium, the trimesters number out as 57 days, and 55 days. And then in the second year, they number out at 57, 55, and 57 days per trimester in that order. So when we're balancing out where things are landing and how to also achieve balanced calendars, trimesters, we felt we were able to land there while also meeting the other desired outcomes that we're striving for. So with that, I'll pause there and open up for questions you might have.
Does anybody have any questions? Heather, go ahead.
Mostly around the second year of the calendar and around midwinter break, which is really early that year. And I'm just trying to think of families and sports seasons and everything and travel. I'm assuming that the reason that it's early is the balance of second trimester so that you end and then you get a break and then you come back. It would just seem to me, and I don't know whether that's part of the conversation of this group, that for families who are trying to match up closer with other kids who are in colleges or other schools or anything along those lines, or just for, I would say personally as a parent, that break period that early to me just is not as effective as I'd like it to be. More from a family, personal perspective than probably a school. So I understand the trimester. Is there any conversation about when that midwinter break happens in your meetings?
There was a lot of conversation. There were a lot of conversations about everything that fell wherever it fell in this calendar, because the reality is, and all perspectives are valid. Like, I want to be clear. Like, all the tensions that exist in this calendar are real and have value. What really drove this one, the question you're asking specifically, was as we looked at the time calendar and needing to maximize as much of that summer specifically, the second one, to be sure that the Apollo kitchen was completed, so that it was operational when kids showed up. We really felt we had to capture all of June that we could. So our first iteration had us going into that first week of June, and then as we looked at that construction calendar, we felt we really had to back up and get out of that first week of June, which ended up influencing where the midwinter week. I do appreciate the question. It's very fair.
It's been hard for me with different sports and this college breaks here, local colleges break here. This is when different state competitions are, and there was, in my small world, there was never a clear path, so it was always miserable. Because you can't have it all. We're all not on sync.
It just feels, that one particularly more so than most years, because the year before, it is the 8th through the 12th. I mean, that's a full almost 2 weeks earlier. And again, I trust, I'm not sitting in the room. I'm not considering everything. I'm just making sure that it was discussed, because even 2 weeks later, not even just a week, would, I think, be, for some people, a better opportunity for family types of activities.
Anybody else? Thoughts on the calendar? This is an action item. Administration is recommending that we approve the school calendars for the 26-27 school year and 27-28 school year.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott and a second by Diana. Any further discussion? Okay, Heather, can you call vote?
Gina Acevedo?
Yes.
Natalie Copeland?
Yes.
Zach Dorholt? Shannon Haas?
Yes.
Heather Weems? Yes. Diana Fenton?
Yes.
Scott Andreessen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, next we have the Changemaker Hub report out, presenting Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, and welcome Donna Roper, Director of Research Assessment and AI Integration.
Thank you. And just see if I can get my. Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Dr. Putnam, board members, colleagues, and listening community. I'm going to try to get this presenter view going. Beautiful. Super excited to be here again tonight to kind of share with you the Changemaker Hub experience. We're calling this the Changemaker Hub report out, but what I want to emphasize for tonight is that this was part of our professional learning day, and it was the very first time that we held something like this. And what we hope you will see tonight in this presentation is the process that kind of represents a shift in how we want to go about listening to our stakeholders. We're hoping that as we build out our 742 graduate Future Ready by Design portrait for our district, that we can use this strategy to really gather what I would call that sort of street level data, if you will, in addition to having all the quantitative data that we have and all the qualitative survey data that we collect. This is just a really, really strategic and powerful way to gather really rich data. So I will preface your viewing of this tonight to kind of think about this as process. We did have a very small turnout for this initial hub, and we'll talk more about that. I'm going to share information on that, and then Jason is going to share with you some of the insights that we got from this experience, and then we'll sort of tag team on the recommendations. How does that sound? Okay? Okay. So again, we did this in partnership with World Savvy, and World Savvy is very good at running these hubs. And what the 6-hour workshop primarily sets us up to do is, first of all, it creates a really rich and psychologically safe environment, if you will, for different stakeholders to come together so that we can hear one another's authentic voice. And so we invited not only World Savvy, they sent us 6 facilitators to help us out with this part of the day. We had several teachers. We had 19 to 20 teachers. We had several staff members. You can see the numbers, 24 of those. We had 23 community members who all joined us on that day to sort of do some learning together on really our pillars of our strategic plan and some skills around future readiness. Again, this is the methodology, and I just spoke to that, but one of the core findings that we had for the day were related to teacher-student relationships. And what we learned is that it really is an anchor of the safety and success in our district. And everyone who went into this process were encouraged to sort of go into it with sort of a change maker mindset, offering their openness and as a way to really feel safe in sharing their ideas and solutions, as well as identifying problems and challenges. So again, I think the teacher-student relationship thing was one really big finding that we want to continue to build on. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, Jason, for just some of the insights in addition to that.
Yeah, perfect. Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, board members. Amidst all the crazy things that are going on in the world and the climate, this is a perfect way to really look at, we got a chance to bring all stakeholders together. We got to bring students, teachers, community folks, mentors, specifically in this process of being authentic and getting, to what Donna said, information from our students, like really what's taking place for me as a student when I show up to school every day, when I'm in the classroom, when I'm in that learning community, really what's taking place for me. And a lot of times we don't hear enough from the students, but now you had the students giving their perspective, teachers, and the community members all together to have dialogue around learning. And one of the insights that we found was what we know and what we talk about in our strategic plan. When students find their interests early and they build off of it, those things engage me into learning, right? So when you look at the constraint of I'm just doing a workshop or a worksheet, specifically in an assignment, to if I could build a website, create a statue, do a rap beat, kids get more engaged in what the learning is. And so the students told us that again, and we need to continue to find ways how to make learning relevant and meaningful to the curriculum, built off interest. We hear it enough, and the students talked about it. I could just be in school as a co-pilot, just sitting there, and I'm not engaged. And what engages students? We know if I find my joy and interest, when we look at numbers, we ask the kids, what's going on? They can tell us. And so they told us specifically, and insight number one is finding that joy and interest in what I do, right? I think if you go to the next one, when we look at it, if you go back one before I even go forward, back to the next slide, Donna, specifically on what the kids said. They have Eagle and Tiger Time, right? We learned of creating a win time for kids. I got a busy schedule. If I go to school 7 hours a day, I have millions of interactions with kids. If I'm in a building of 1,000 students, to the bus, from first when I'm waking up to the bus, to the school, I have multiple interactions. When COVID said, we all discussed, we need to build time in the schedule for kids, teachers, to have that breath, right? Give me 30 minutes in the day to do what I need. If I'm an athlete and I got 5 activities, I gotta get a study hall. If I'm a student and I need to do some extra support, I can go there. And we've learned that Eagle and Tiger Time are some of the ways that kids have found like of interest. I could go talk to X, Y, and Z if I need this. To the point when we look at our hands-on learning and our pathways, we've learned through art and welding and photography. If you go in a building and you see the photography class out in the hallways, right, in the ways, they're taking pictures there, and we ask questions. What do you? I like this, right? How do you help them build off of it? And so I think the joy in the way of learning, how it occurs, we're hearing it again from students. I think the insight too, just adults and mandate, specifically the students had a wish list, right? Teach me independent living skills, right? How do I learn how to do my taxes and insurance and how to be financially literate early, right? Soon the kid, they get money. How do I make that in a sense of I can save it, I can build it, I can invest it? The sooner we have conversations, because kids are on social media and all the platforms, they're learning some of those things there. Students said, hey, how can we make it in the wish list for us? And then we do it in the sense of our career readiness. We talk to students about find your interests, build on hands-on community. If I want to do X, Y, and Z around learning, here's the opportunity in that.
Yeah, and to add just one thing that's really interesting that popped in the data was for students, they define rigor one way, and for teachers, they define it another way. That was an interesting perspective that popped in the data set. You could see there was a real difference in definition of rigor for kids versus teachers, so we thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think you hit it, Donna. That was one that stood out. And then just students talked about, and I sat at a table with the students when they talk about collaboration in the classroom. If it's 30 students and we do an activity, how's that collaborative exercise or activity look in the class? Do I just say, hey, let's put 4 students together, or is it structured in roles, right? Because we know students will go, if Donna's going to do the heavy lift for the whole project, we're going to let Donna do the heavy lift, right? But if you identify who's going to do what, it also teaches them how to collaboratively work in the group, right? And so how do we set it up around learning? And so we talked about the cultural shift and some of the activities that need to be really personally connected to students to learn, and then roles around it. Yeah.
Right, they talked about also, like, they're not anti-collaborative. They're not against working in groups. They just know that when they do work in groups, you know, they want it to be meaningful and they want to have a role and have clarity on that. And those are great insights that help us, you know, do things like take action. So it was really interesting to read all the data that came back around the authentic interdependence, if you will, that students are sort of craving in their group work. There you go, Jason.
Yeah, and I think to what we know and how we holistically work with students and really helping them deal with emotion and regulation. And middle school always, you know, for me the most, when I'm in a middle school, I can see kids jumping up and down, the kids crying, to all of it, because the emotional regulation between the ages of 12 to 13 in the school and middle sometimes are all over the place. But how do we really teach them those interpersonal skills to develop for the world, right? And so it has to start early. If you got kids and thinking about how that shows up to you, if you got a school-age kid and emotionally how they really connected, those are skills that we really have to teach our kids with, of how to really regulate your emotions, really deal with conflict and all of the things, right? And so how do you look at the neurodiversity of the students? And when you look at it, you look at really the social inclusion and the pieces around that learning, specifically in that, and the digital nuances. I think one of the biggest things now, you know, with our technology is, where's the human connection, right? I went to a party this weekend for a 16-year-old, and you had kids. We were in this square, and they were on their phones, right? My wife got mad at me because I went to interrupt everybody on their phone to start asking questions, right? Like, what's going on in 10th grade and high school? Tell me. And they kind of looked, and I was like, I work with kids all the time. I want to know, like, what's going on, right? And so I had the kid tell me, like, shoot, she was on the fastest track. She was graduating with an associate. I was like, that's the fast track right there. To the young lady that I had a conversation with, she was like, I can't take AP classes. And I said, why not, right? And so those things, when we really get to the digital nuances around that, and I know I kind of got off, but that personal connection is real key to our students and specifically what they're faced with in the world right now. And so, Donna, I'll let you add anything to that piece of it.
No, that's perfect. I think the surprising thing for me in looking at the data was just how articulate they were about neurodiversity. Like the fact that they understand people have different brain needs, right? So kudos to our teachers who are teaching kids about how their brain works. These young people were able to reflect in the data set something about that, which was really impressive. And they're asking for us to make sure others know about that, students and staff and teachers. So I thought that was really impressive. And these are human skills, right? These are really the human skills that they're saying they need. So the next, you want to do the next
And
one?
then one of our core pillars, how do I feel safe in the environment? How do I feel connected where I'm going to be vulnerable? I'm going to speak up. If we don't have the same perspective and views, how do I acknowledge and this is teaching our students early, right? These are students and helping our teachers teach our students to have these conversations of what makes me feel safe when I'm in the school, in the classroom, right? What makes me want to participate? What makes me want to give my all in the classroom? And we know if a students don't feel safe in the classroom, they're not going to engage, right? And so we heard that again around that emotional safety. And one of the unique and one of the great things about our district, we have such a diverse population in the classroom that we can learn from one another. And so in that, some kids may not feel safe, and we heard some of the things, but relationships can help kids feel safe, trusted adults, all the things, student-to-student relationships, right? That teacher-to-student relationship. If I know I have a trusted adult in the classroom and I know like truly this teacher cares about me, that student is going to engage because they know you're connected to them, right? And so how do we teach other students to have the same relationship student to student, right? And then we go a step further from the school to the home relationship, right? And so when we see what's going on now, when people are afraid, how do we create safety? And I think we heard some of it tonight. We need to be able to come together and outwardly say how I want to help you feel safe in the classroom. I think we don't have those conversations with the students that enough, really getting to that deep down learning in the environment.
And so some of the bigger thought questions, if you will, sort of coming from students were these 4 questions that we highlighted. There were others, but these ones appeared the most in the data set, although a small data set, but I thought these were really insightful and worth sharing with you all tonight. These really are not surface level questions. These are pretty deep, right? Our young people are wrestling with some of the fundamental challenges of our time, and it's not a surprise, right? Schools are microcosms of the larger society, and this is just a really good picture of that very thing. The thing that we want to be able to do with data that we gather through a Changemaker Hub is things like make strategic pivots. So that's why I added this slide in here mostly as a, when we go out and do Changemaker Hub work, where we're actually collecting so much data and feedback, street level data, we want to be able to turn it around into actions. And so with this small data set, some of the actions we might take would be like look at some of the academic tasks we're asking kids to do and redesign for that by providing more opportunity to tackle real world problem solving, for example, that help kids, gain more of those adulting skills that they're seeking to gain. We might look at, where there's assumed collaboration and we think it's happening, maybe we need to do more structured group work and interdependent sort of group work with defined roles and clarity. Where we have safety that is teacher-led, how can we release that to our kids so it's more peer-to-peer and they're leading in conversations around perhaps safety or belonging. And and I think some of the data suggested some kids really like to listen to their music, but other kids might not. So then how are we building understanding among students about the different ways in which we all feel like we belong or we feel safety? So these are just some examples of like what we would do with Changemaker Hub data as we go forward and work towards clarifying some of the needs on the portrait of a grad that we're planning to work on going into the rest of this year and next year. So again, you can see from a small hub experience how we use data to potentially shift as just one example. Again, we would do things like make recommendations, and we are looking at some because these are easy sort of low-hanging fruit things that we can do. One of them might be integrating life skills, learning experiences into already existing opportunities. And then, I know, Jason, you can speak to the implementation strategy because many of these we already do, but
We
go
have
ahead.
life skills classes starting in 6th grade, life skills 1 and 2, and we have board members that have kids in a sense. So some of the things that we learned were just reaffirm what we need to continue to do. I lead right now a college and career design team, right? And we talk about how life skills are relevant in the curriculum, right? So we know we just had the requirement for personal finance to be a graduation requirement. Our state understands that too. And so finding ways to make it meaningful and relevant in the sense of that task list that we saw from kids is reaffirming when I'm in these courses, how's it meaningful and relevant, and how's it preparing me for the world? And so I just get the great job of overseeing secondary where you can really help start interests at 6th grade, like life skills class, all the way to I can find a pathway in 11th and 12th grade of my interests, if it's health, science, manufacturing, automotive, to those things.
And then a second recommendation that we would pose from this little data set that we gathered would be, to support professional learning focused on what we're calling complex collaboration, which is really helping everyone who's leading student groups understand designing high quality group work, what that looks like. And that's something I think I have heard teachers ask for, hey, I could use ideas on how to do this. And so it's something we can include in our choices day for PD, and there's maybe some other things, Jason, that you would share that we might be able to do.
Yeah, I just think in the sense of specifically, how do you create collaboration in designing group work? When you're designing lessons, how's it in the activity around how specific group work looks and what students should do in it, right? And so I think those are strategies on what we talk about right now on effective first instruction. When you're setting up a lesson, what's the learning target? How's that look? How's the activity look? And these are just things for us to continue to drill in. On the other side with our teachers around their collaborative work with their PLTs and all the things. And so when you start to understand when we have specific collaborations, if it's teachers or students, you're going to get better outcomes around the collective impact, right? We've learned this in our data.
And if you've ever had to design group work or run it or facilitate it, it's not easy. It takes a lot of thought and intention to do it really, really well and to achieve the goals that you're hoping, to have happen. And so it's something we can all get better at, I think, if we're really looking at it honestly, right?
Yeah.
Here's another one. I don't know, Jason, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, we we lead in the sense of building our communities within our school around expectations and what it looks like for a staff, student, and a community member. The strategies just helps us to even more. How do you build community with schools, right? In your community, you do it through relationships. If it's teacher student, student to student, we know these are the structured ways. What does that look like? So if I'm talking to Donna in the surface level of her, we start out maybe with her dress or shoes or whatever, but how do I really get to the conversation that I was sharing about the example of the kids that I was at the party with, to ask those questions? What do you want to do with your life, right? And start to think about it now, don't wait. And so, but kids need that safety, and they looked at me like I was crazy because they didn't know me, right? And the piece is, our trusted adults of our teachers get to know your students, because we know that really helps the engagement around learning, right?
Right, and then I would add just the goal of just expanding this idea of safety not just being about trusted adults, because we know in our survey data, many students report having trusted adults at school, but it's about including peers, and how can we have peers that we trust, that we feel safe enough to like not fear judgment if we're, showing what we know, for example. So, and then I would say we have strategic questions. Jason, you want to go through these?
Yeah, I just think these are the things that, and we look at our continuous improvement plans. We want to take this data set and ask these questions. How can we get better at Eagle and Tiger Time? How do we look at the elective and cores? To some of the things that we're doing right now. We shared in our last year, around new content curriculum that's being implemented, our new standards that really look at more practical skills in the set of learning. How do we continue to find those ways to really embed that in our continuous improvement? And then how do we, our social emotional development within the human skills. I think we have our mental health supports tonight, and we have done work with our Character Strong curriculum, because we need to teach our students how to be empathetic, how to care for their neighbor, all the things. And we know that's a human connection, and how we develop those skills. When we looked at the list of, and I think Superintendent Putnam and Director Roper just went on the world economic skills that students need, right? It wasn't, creativity was up there, right? And how can I become creative? And so that's a humanistic piece, right? And so how do we continue to get at those ways of getting kids into the sense of being connected humanly? And then the third one is specifically always looking at the data. How are we pulling data to inform our decisions to how learning occurs? And this Changemaker Hub gave us a good model to get our teachers, students, and our stakeholders together to really prepare our kids on what learning looks like currently now, and how we prepare them for the future, because we need to start to our future ready graduate framework. And this was just a good data set. So we'll ask these questions to our groups, our cabinet, our building leaders, because they're doing some of the work now, and we're just going to grow off it from this data.
And that concludes our update on the Changemaker report, and we'll take any questions.
Thanks. Anybody have any questions or comments at all? Scott?
I like the idea of teaching life skills. I mean, we should be teaching life skills. I mean, financials, an accounting class or bookkeeping class or something like that, so they can at least do their checkbook. I think they still use the checkbooks. And also, on the more personal level, when I was a Boy Scout leader, I taught kids how to change a tire on the car. I mean, I don't think we teach that at all. It's something maybe we should look at. And then finally, this, how do you solve the problem of the freeloader in a group? I don't know how you solve that. If you got any ideas, I'd like to hear it. Because I've seen my own daughter and one other carrying the whole load for a group of 5 or 6. That's enough.
I'll add, if you want to watch a tire being changed. I'll talk to Principal Scholar Rudy. You can come over and look at the automotive class because they go from teaching in the class to working in the industry. And so
Yeah, but girls got to know too.
So I'll just share a quick example on the House bill. When we went to Habitat for Humanity and we talked to all the stakeholders, we had one female student that was amongst all the trade and industry males, right? And it came from Tech High School. So to what you know, we want to expose all kids to, I saw one of our Somali female students at middle level last spring and a hammer on the build for the house, right? And so giving kids exposure, finding your interests early to just what you know, however you show up, we want to give you the opportunity.
Y'all, this is exciting stuff. This is what we should be doing, and I'm really proud of both of you and us because this is who we are. It just reminds me, there are folks in our community who say, well, students are our future leaders. That's a lie. Students lead us today, and you see this in this data. We value their leadership here. And the outside the box thinking that they do, and that was at my table when I was at Changemaker, was just pretty amazing. I really appreciated the way you said that students are not anti-collaboration, they are anti-efficiency. And I did hear that at my table as well, that, and I think some of that goes into the fact of, I think students really want to know each other, but I don't know that they know, not that they don't know how, but it goes, so strategic question number 2, I think it's going in the right direction, but I wonder if we're off a little bit. And feel free to push back on it. Leveraging strong teacher-student relationships to build stronger peer-to-peer relationships. I almost feel like if that was the way we could do it, it would have already been done. And the only reason I say that is because, when I heard kids there students talking about safety, and the reason they feel unsafe is because they don't maybe know from day to day who their peers are or who they're in a group with, and I don't know who you are, so I don't trust you. But when I think about what we fought for on this board with the MSHSL student leaders, and those days that are all student leaders and all student led, I can see that we are priming the pump for that to be us. Because we're already doing that in MSHSL, but also we're doing that in music and sports and activities, and you see that all over our social media, right? High school bands go to middle school bands and say, hey, you should do this. And the kids answer the questions. I know because my kids are the ones that lead the bands. And so they're like, well, I got to get on the microphone today and talk about why I chose drums. But then not only that, but middle schoolers are going to elementary school and they're seeing themselves in each other. And I think that's the path forward. And we're already doing it in some ways. Same thing with sports and activities. When my middle son was in football starting in 3rd grade, he played right alongside the high schoolers at Apollo, and that gave him his glimpse into the future. The teacher-student relationship beauty that I heard in that room was so affirming of what we already knew. But I'm wondering, how do we build those strong peer-to-peer relationships? I know you're doing the same thing since it's all over these slides, right? And there's some hints that we get from our students in this slide. The talk about neurodiversity education, that, and then the big question, how can we become more connected? It's almost like code for like, can you help us know each other? Can you help me know how to navigate my peers? Because they're different from me and I want to know them, but how do I know them? I think they want to care for each other too, and this critical gap of student-to-student relationships actually really bothers them, like immensely. I know it does for my kids and for the students that I heard there on that day. And I don't have the answers, I'm just putting more questions on the table. Aren't I good at that? But thank you for asking the important questions. And then lastly, I heard so much that day about calm environments, so thanks for putting that on there. I'm just really proud of to have my kids in a district that has been a leader in our anti-cell phone policies and still having them at high school, because we're teaching them that real word, like you won't just be able to put your cell phone to the side while you work an 8-hour day. So we ride the line constantly of future ready, but also calm environments until maybe your brain can be a little bit more future ready. So thanks for this, and thank you that this is just the first of the future of many of these. So thanks for your work.
Donna, you referenced that I'll call it the adults or the teachers and the students defined rigor differently. Can you talk a little bit more about what you heard and saw in that conversation?
So unfortunately, I didn't get to participate in the hub. I was busy doing other things that day, which was really disappointing. However, I did get to review all the audio files, all the transcriptions, and all the data. So I sort of kind of got to be there through this plethora of information that I got to study. And I would say it came up many times where, so I think for teachers, the rigor is so much more academic and intellectual, and for the kids, it's more tactile and more being able to do something that they can. That's what was popping in the data set, was where teachers see rigor, I think, more in a performative way on an academic. And that's rigor. That's true. But the kids didn't necessarily corroborate that. Like, their view of it is, I want to be able to successfully lead a life that I can do things with, right? Which is interesting. I'm not saying no right or wrong, no judging, right? It's different kinds of ways of thinking about rigor, which is interesting.
To the academic rigor, right? To post-secondary, I see it in the classrooms where it's more academia language than more relevancy and real, like skill sets that you saw that task list of what they talked about. These were like real world things. Like, how do I start to think about my future? And they used taxes, and I was surprised, right? In the sense, things that in my day-to-day interactions, if it's money, if it's collaboration with one another, they're not thinking about it from the academia world of the language or what we saw. They want, how does this apply to me right now? And that's this generation. You got high school kids, you know how they specifically are in the day-to-day practicality, and they look at it around those things. They have to see that task to make relevance of the learning than you just telling me this is gonna prepare me for college in a sense.
And I'm curious to dig deeper into that one, to be honest, because I do think there's a level of, there's a coming together of that, if you will. It isn't that we can't provide academic rigor in a learning task, like potentially making something, right? There is rigor academic rigor that can happen in that. So I think I'm curious to dig into that more too. And I wonder, I don't know, Katie, you were in one of the hubs that talked about learning and innovation. I don't know if you heard anything specific that you'd want to share?
Not necessarily about rigor, but one of the things we talked about is, my group talked about, was how their joy in learning changes over time and their creativity changes over time. So they felt like they were able to be really creative and had a lot of joy in elementary school, and that sort of changed kind of as they progressed in school. So a lot of the conversation we had was surrounding how can we bring more of that joy and creativity back to those older grade levels. So they had some really great ideas.
So just a couple of comments, and I agree, none of this is easy in trying to find the right balance. It's interesting that we talk about the joy of being young and creative. We, in my world of sports, we have talked about how we've taken out all unstructured play. And by definition, even what I heard in this presentation is the kids actually like when you tell them what they need to do. They want it to be efficient. They want an outcome. There is a place where we need to help them understand abstractness and the ability to navigate it, because that's actually probably more of what they're going to see in life. I mean, I think they want it to be taxes and checkbooks and no, they don't actually use checkbooks any longer. Checkbooks and debit cards, or their parents' credit cards, whatever. I think that, I mean, that's the challenge. When I look at this, I'm really, to be honest, torn. I'm torn by just because you can, you don't always, you shouldn't always, and trying to understand. I mean, even with some of the life skills sorts of things. And I think about it from the standpoint, and I'd be maybe a little bit interested in understanding what community members said to this as well. I feel like we keep putting more and more on schools as to what they're supposed to teach. And so you're supposed to teach them how to change a tire, but you used to do that in Boy Scouts. I grew up in 4-H and learned how to do that stuff. And now we're looking at schools and we're saying, in your 7 hours, we want you to, I mean, we heard from our speakers earlier, our community members, there are some who say it's reading, writing, and I know that that's old school, don't get me wrong, but there are subjects, and obviously civics comes into that, and there's all of these things, and then on top of that, but you also need to teach technology, you need to teach AI, you need to teach how to change a tire, how to change oil, how to use your finances. And I'm wondering what the community members, where does that happen that's not just in the schools? And then particularly in the gaps. I mean, again, I'll talk about it as generally a person of privilege. My kids get a lot of that at home. That isn't how everybody grows up. There's not the same level of stability. But we have to close some of those gaps as well. I don't know. I mean, sometimes, to be honest, I'm just overwhelmed by it all, which I'm sure you all are as well. But I think, you know, in a hub, you can hear all of these things, and you've got to, I mean, I'll use it the same way. You know, I go to conferences, less now than I used to, but you go to conferences and you have, you know, a day or 3 days where all you think about is new ideas. And then you come back to the real world and you don't implement any of those things because the reality is the real world kicks you in the butt. So I'm just, I also want to be thoughtful. I mean, it's a huge task, but what can you, you know, take on? And while they want meaningful all the time, I think in some ways we've set an expectation that everything has to be meaningful all the time. And the reality is some days, I'll say it for myself, I get up and what I do is I put one foot on the ground and the next, and then I just keep going. And that also has to be an expectation.
I love it, right? You hit it, right? It's always not great. It's all hard work. Some days you don't want, and you got to tell students that, right? You can't just show up to the test. You got to do the formative assessments all the time. Sometimes you do have students, and they're very rare that could just show up and ace a test, right? In the sense, you have to work hard. We have great community partners that have stepped in the gaps. If it's not United Way or our Boys and Girls Club, Career One, all the folks that have stepped in the gaps to offer the things that, because you're right, you can't take everything in one day, and we grapple with the 6-period day and all the things, but our community partners have really stepped up to try to help in the gaps. If it's summer, if it's giving experiences to all the things that they couldn't get in the classroom. So kudos to our community partners that help with that.
I'll just finally say, you know, part of this is to develop a portrait of, you know, what this community values, and community partners are industry partners, higher ed partners, teachers, staff, students are going to be part of that. If we use this strategy, we will all learn and grow, including our students, right? They'll learn it can't all just be this, right? Like, and we'll learn from industry what really matters to them. We'll learn from others what adulting needs really matter, and we'll build a portrait that the community, you know, believes in, and we'll go from there. So the idea ultimately of this is really to get us going in a direction where we're dialoguing on getting to those competencies in our portrait work that is.
And I'll just share one last thing that I mean, I've held on to since I was visiting colleges on my own, which was many, many years ago. Marquette University in Milwaukee. My mom talks about this. It was actually in a parent group. And I think it speaks to phases and what we learn and how we think and why, in some ways, all of this is important, but it's so hard to manage. They used to do a study. I don't know if they still do. Again, this was many moons ago. They used to do a study of their graduates, and they would ask them 10 years out, what do you wish that you would have taken more of when you were in college, which could also apply to high school. And 10 years out, a lot of them said, I wish I'd taken more business classes. I want to be able to do accounting. I want to be able to manage a budget. I need to understand marketing. And then 20 years out, and I'm making up these numbers, but 20 years out, they said, what do you wish you would have taken more of? And a lot of them said, I wish that I would have taken more psychology and sociology classes because I'm now in a position of management, and now I'm trying to understand people, and I'm trying to understand how to motivate them and how to create work environments and those sorts of things. And then they asked them 30 years out, what is it that you wish you would have taken more of? And mostly at that point, what they said is, I wish I would have taken more about arts and history, because now I'm trying to put an understanding of the world together and figure out where I fit in that, and how do I enjoy and benefit from beauty and from abstract things, and just live into the rest of my life sort of things, because I'm kind of past I'm moving up sort of stage. And I think, to me, that has always been really powerful. And to be honest, I think we've done a terrible job of actually helping people understand that. I think about it when I worked on college campuses, how much we didn't talk about why the core classes mattered. They were just things you had to check off a list because somebody told you had to check them off a list. I thought that example by Marquette did the best job of that, because what it understands is that we are changing human beings, and that as we navigate life, there's so much more that we have to see. And I think sometimes students get caught in, I want to know this right now. Well, what does it look like in community when we talk about, life ready? It can't just be about life ready when they're 18 and graduating, or 22, or 25 and young. It is, how do they look at the larger scope of it? And that's, when I hear about the hubs, it is trying to integrate all of that. And it's really difficult, but it has to be a community endeavor.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thank you guys very much for presenting that. Next up, we have another discussion item, is the mental health supports update. We have Shannon Avinson, Executive Director of Community Education and Community Partnerships, as well as Jen Lisi, Coordinator for Student Services and Community Partnerships. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. All right. Good evening, Chair Haas, Dr. Putnam, and members of the board. I'm Shannon Avinson, Executive Director of Community Education and Partnerships. I'll let Jen introduce herself.
Good evening. I'm Jen Lisi, Coordinator of Student Services and Community Partnerships.
Jen and I have the privilege of sharing with you some mental health updates and supports that we have in place for students in District 742. We're incredibly lucky and proud to work with this amazing team. Quite honestly, it's like my favorite team to work with. St. Cloud Area School District has over 90 mental health team participants. And we're going to dig into a few of those roles tonight, but we can't go into all of them, obviously, in detail, because that would take all evening. But this team has a wide variety of licensures, training, expertise, and compassion. And I mean it when I say our students are truly in great hands.
Yeah, this is a document that we had created. It's kind of an at-a-glance document that describes the ways that our mental health team supports students district-wide. So it talks about, starting at the beginning, the triage team, and then our school psychologists who support students all the way from preschool through age 21. It moves into our school counselors and our other social workers that work across the district with elementary students through secondary students. And then the additional supports that are available for secondary family students, our mental health advocates, and also our chemical health counselors that work at our secondary sites. On the bottom is a list of some community resources if parents or guardians need some additional supports in the community for their student. There's some quick ways to access additional support there. And the QR code is linked to our mental health webpage for the district. There's a live link there. If you want to look into that, that's the resource guide that talks further about each of the roles that these team members play in our district and the ways they support students and families. I'll give a brief overview of the social emotional learning curriculums that are used district-wide. And they're quite in-depth, but these are our tier 1 resources, so used school-wide. Character Strong is used at our elementary schools. They teach school-wide lessons weekly, and they support students in building character and strengthening relationships, developing skills and responsibility and resilience. Safe and Strong is taught by our school counselors, and this is really, it's taught at the kindergarten grade level and then additional grade levels depending upon the school. And that is an age-appropriate personal safety curriculum, and it really encourages students to have healthy boundaries and then also to build confidence so that they will report anything that they might be concerned about. They can report that to trusted adults in the building. Be Good People is used at Apollo and Tech. They're doing lessons 1 to 2 times a month, talking about helping students understand themselves and manage feelings, treating others with respect. Then at McKinley, they'll be using the Kevin Love curriculum, and that's more of a curriculum that uses video stories from athletes and celebrities, encouraging vulnerability and helping students express their emotions. Erica's Lighthouse is used by our health teachers in grades 6 through 12, and that really focuses on destigmatizing mental health and then teaching students how to recognize signs of depression in themselves and in their friends and others. And then BAR is in our junior highs and then also in 9th grade, and it's a dedicated time built into the school day for students to receive additional supports. And then there are teams that meet weekly to really talk about each of the students and make sure that they're meeting all of those needs. And then there are I-Time lessons that are taught weekly for students in grades 6 through 9. Some of our tier 2 and 3 interventions that we utilize, one is a curriculum called BASE. It's an online curriculum. We have virtual lessons that are available on a wide variety, about 90 different topics that can be utilized in resource rooms and student support rooms. They're used at our middle schools and high schools, and then Lincoln also purchased it for their site for grades 4 or 5. And really, it really talks about addressing behaviors, chronic truancy, and then chemical health issues. And then, of course, we have restorative practices and restorative circles that are used often in middle schools to really help those relationships and help students take accountability through dialogue and really making more safer and equitable environments. This is really exciting for us. So we received some financial support from the Jackson Roeder Legacy Fund, and I think you may have heard about this earlier in October. They purchased the viewing rights for 2 films for our district this school year, in addition to students in Sauk Rapids, Sartell, Cathedral, St. John's Prep. And we are able to show these films for all students in grades 6 through 12. So we showed the Upstanders in October, and that really addressed bullying and then how to be an upstander for friends and peers. And then we'll be showing the film Like in the month of February. So each of our secondary sites will be showing Like, and that will be talking about social media and then how to establish healthy boundaries with social media and really breaking down the impacts of social media and how it's impacting students' lives. And both of the videos can be shared out with parents and guardians as well. So we really encourage parents to take the time. It's about a 50-minute video, the film Like, and to really look at how social media is impacting the lives of our children. Youth empowerment groups. These are really exciting groups of students at both Tech and Apollo high schools. They are a group of, Apollo has been running for a little bit longer. There are about 45 members in the Apollo group, and right now there are about 15 to 20 members at Tech. They're just getting started, but they do a lot of things to promote mental health wellness and awareness for their peers. They do things like sponsoring Safe Talk trainings where students can really talk about suicide awareness and have conversations and be supports for one another and bring helpful adults into their lives. They hand out different swag during National Mental Health Awareness Month and Suicide Prevention Day. They distribute positive messages. One of the fun things is the chalk Chalk the Walk at Tech. They put lots of messages out on the sidewalks 3 times a year to just promote positivity and kindness. And then Apollo does some interactive mental health bulletin boards that are really fun as well. And they also, the LEAF grant that Apollo received last year, they designed a calm room, and that's been really exciting for them there. They reported that several students use that every week as just a quiet place to reset when they need it.
If you recall last year, Amy Walls came in and presented on You're Not Alone with Jenny Schad. I know, I get to present the best slide. You're welcome. So you can see we still have our pairs at Tech. That's Jenny Schad and Murphy. At South, we have Betty and Hunter down in the right corner there. At Kennedy, it's Sarah and Watson. Oh my gosh, how cute is Watson? And then that is through a contract that we have with You're Not Alone. That's a free service to our schools. And then she is incredibly passionate, as you saw last year, and trying really hard to get more therapy dogs and more teams in the rest of our schools as well. We were also fortunate. We were approached by St. Cloud Police Department, and last spring we entered into a contract with them as well to provide Canine Laker up in the right corner there. He is our service dog at Catherine Johnson Education Center, and his handler is our school resource officer, Janelle Haas. And so if you haven't been there and got to hang out with that team, it's quite fun. All right, like I said, we aren't diving into absolutely every single mental health professional that we have. We just didn't have the time for that tonight, but I did want to highlight our chemical health team. I really truly believe that we have one of the most comprehensive chemical health programs in the state. We have 4 licensed alcohol and drug counselors. Carolyn Blotnicki splits her time between North and South junior highs. Jenna Fuchs is at McKinley in the recovery program there. Jake Tarati is at Apollo, and Megan Ramsey is at Tech. These staff are just phenomenal to work with and always willing to go to our other schools when they need support as well. That team just steps right up and goes out and supports if any other schools need that. There is a chemical health counseling webpage. I won't click into those links there, but I just want parents and families to be aware that our district website has a chemical health page. It talks about the services that we provide. It talks about McKinley Recovery, and then it also shares how to get a hold of those chemical health counselors if they need. I've been working with mental health and chemical health for quite some time, and you've probably heard me talk about our partnership with Greater Minnesota Family Services. We have co-located mental health services with them. It's an amazing partnership that we've had in place for quite a while, and I will tell you that other districts do reach out to us and kind of envy the amount of co-located therapy we have in place. Currently, 13 clinicians meet with students in 11 of our schools and programs. They serve students in K through 12 and then also in our up to the age of 21 in our CO2 program. Currently, 220 students are receiving site-based services, and they have provided services to over 2,000 students in District 742 since 2010. I'm also excited to share that we just entered into a contract with Sagent. They're formerly known as Nystrom, and that partnership is to explore filling those gaps that we have in some of our programs in schools. We have about 3 or 4 programs that do not currently have co-located therapy on site, and Sagent both Sagent and Greater Minnesota are still actively recruiting therapists to fill all of those positions. So we're incredibly grateful for that. I'm going to click on let you see the video here where it just kind of explains what Greater Minnesota looks like in co-located therapy, what the benefits of that are.
I'm Leanne Doring. I am the mental health advocate here at Tech High School, and my job is to support students with mental health needs and kind of a bunch of other stuff too, but I'm just here to listen and support.
So my name is Catherine Jesperson. I'm a school counselor at Tech High School. I have the last names D through I for 10th through 12th graders, and so I have about 300 students on my caseload. And I work with academics, college, career, and social emotional learning.
I am Tabitha Kraft. I've been with Greater Minnesota for 7 years, and I am considered a school-linked mental health professional. I come into the school, even though I don't work directly for the school, I'm still a part of the school district.
Once a month, Greater Minnesota, myself, and our chemical health counselor, we all meet just to discuss the students that we're working with and see if there's any, connections between academics and those other community supports that maybe we need to look at. So.
Me and Tabitha, we collaborate on some of my students by talking about their mental health, their academics. She may have a better relationship than I do with the student, so talking with her so that she could talk with the student about something that maybe I have concerns about.
Well, the kids that I work with often are troubled and they struggle either with social skills. Some of them it's truancy. It's a hard time for them to come to school because of avoiding certain classes or avoiding people in general. So I feel like I give them a safe place. They're able to come in here and also build relationships, because a lot of kids that come in here, either they're brand new to the school or let's say they're really quiet or withdrawn. And when they come in here, they all kind of start to see that they all are struggling building relationships.
The collaboration with Greater Minnesota is a huge benefit to our students. One of the best parts about it, they don't have to leave the building. So that saves a lot of time missing out of class, right? We don't have to drive to the appointment. We don't have to wait for the appointment, do the appointment, and come back. So that already saves us a ton of time. And for a lot of folks, transportation is hard. And so if she's right in the building, they can walk down the hall. And the other nice thing too is if they're having a hard day, they don't have to wait 3 days for their appointment with their provider in the community. They can just go check in. So those are some of the biggest assets, I think, with having Greater Minnesota in our building.
They love Tabitha. Being able to go to somebody that they really have built that rapport with has been great for them. So not only being able to come to me, but having that extra person in the school that they can go to, that they have that really good bond.
Staff and families find that it's really convenient to have a provider in the building as well. It's someone that we can easily collaborate with. We can walk down to their space and have a conversation, and it's a lot easier to collaborate. We're all in this know about the collaboration, because at the end of the day, we're all here. So whatever is the best fit for each student and family, that's what we're going to do.
Trying to get this open again, sorry. All right, and the next duo that I get to share about is our triage team, and this is something that is also unique to District 742. Joy Notch and Shireen Anderson. Joy works in our elementary schools, and Shireen Anderson works at our secondary sites. They both are licensed marriage family therapists, and they provide a few different roles in our schools. I think one of the most vital roles that they play is they provide immediate support to our schools when a crisis occurs. They partner with principals to provide that response guidance. This includes direct support from them to grieving students and impacted staff. And I will tell you over and over again, I hear staff, just the appreciation from both our principals and our staff for their guidance and for the work that they do. Additionally, they go above and beyond and support students and families in accessing critical services and community resources. This includes connecting to psychiatry and mental health therapy, as well as processing paperwork with family and attending appointments with families as requested.
All right, I'll talk a little bit about our student suicide risk assessments. So we have some assessments that live in our EduClimber system. They were developed by our mental health team members. We have an elementary and a secondary version available. So if a student is expressing suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideation, these documents provide guiding questions that mental health providers can work through with students, and they are able to then provide that information to families if they need some additional support. They're able to then provide resources and also help develop safety plans with students when needed. Those are maintained in a very confidential location within EduClimber and only able to be accessed by mental health staff, so that in the event that it happens again in the future for a student, they can reference if it was saved in that file in the years past. Some of the resources are listed there below too, that are then shared out on the document for families after they have met with a student. Collaboration with Clara's House. So we have been partnering with Clara's House for many years in District 742. 3 of our District 742 teachers provide the education for students when they are at Clara's House. But just recently, we have begun a closer relationship with Clara's House, where we now have a mental health team member on site at every one of our buildings who can help families and staff if a student wants to access support at Clara's House. Previously, they would have to go out and meet with their general practitioner or with a mental health provider in the community to get that referral to Clara's House, and now we are able to make that connection for them directly from the school if the family is interested in that support. And then Clara's House maintains that connection with the family and helps them get access to that resource. We continue to work with CRY, which is our Child Response Initiative. There is a new CRY advocate this year, and her name is Madison Shirel. She goes by Maddie, and she is a trauma-informed advocate and a mental health practitioner with Central Minnesota Mental Health Center. And she is working with our triage team this year to make sure that they are efficiently coordinating services. So if a student in our district is needing some additional support from law enforcement and they've been exposed to trauma, and they need that additional level of support, it's that coordinated community response that is available for families in our area. And it's nice that she has that new partnership now with our triage team so that all of our resources are being vended the most efficiently. Our community collaborations, we're really proud of the community collaborations and the support that we receive from our partners. We have a great relationship with Clara's House, the Child Advocacy Center, and our suicide prevention programs at CentraCare. In fact, they all provided professional development yesterday for our staff. They provide opportunities for staff to go on site and do tours, and they also come on site and provide professional development for our staff. The Stearns County Truancy Triage Team, I sit on that team, and we meet twice a month where we talk about students who have chronic truancy, but we look at their needs and their issues and triage them, and if they need some additional supports from the county or additional supports from our teams at school, we're able to talk through those needs and issues together. Similar with the United Way Mental Health Committee and the Stearns County Operations Council, I'm able to sit on there and provide information from our schools and then bring information back from those agencies to share with our mental health team members. And Kate Bukowski sits on our JCAT team, which is the Juvenile Community Action Team.
All right. We implemented Say Something last March, I believe, and that is an anonymous reporting system. We use it in our secondary schools. The beautiful thing about Say Something is there are multiple reporting options, a mobile app, text, phone, hotline. Most of our students are likely using their Chromebooks to report. But it is 24 hours a day that students can report a concern that they have. It could be a safety concern for self or others, bullying. We'll take a look at some data here in just a minute. But as I said before, it's just another opportunity for students who may not feel comfortable going and having that conversation in person with an adult, but lots of students feel pretty comfortable messaging through phone or through their Chromebook. This is the total events by school and month, and as I said, we implemented last March. The green there, I know it's a little challenging to see, but the green is North Junior High for whatever reason. They are the #1 user of this app, and behind them is South Junior High. So our middle school students really are taking advantage of this opportunity to report tips, and you can see the peak months there. When we first implemented it, there was great use by North and by South. Then over the summer months, as you would expect, we saw that dip down. But then in October, we saw a major increase in usage as well. In the red there, that is Tech Senior High. So we have seen more usage from our tech students as well within the last few months. I'm just showing you here just a look at what some of the various tips are that we're getting reported. I just did the North, South Junior Highs and Kennedy, the middle schools, because when I added the high school, it was really hard to look at. So, but what you can see here is they can report anything from bullying, and that's probably one of our highest tip reportings is bullying and cutting or self-harm. They can report depression, anxiety, fear for a friend who might have suicidal ideation, student or for self, everything they could report if they were concerned about a potential weapon being in school. And again, everything from eating disorders to maybe they heard that there might be a planned fight. And so this is just a great opportunity for our students to share what they're hearing and what they might be concerned about.
And we just wanted to close tonight to talk a little bit about the professional development opportunities that we try to offer to support our mental health staff. Like Shannon mentioned, we're really grateful for the great work that they do with our students. And we really try to honor the types of professional development that are pertinent to them and that they need for maintaining their license as well. So we try to host as many different sessions as we can here on site so that as many staff members as possible can attend. And then we also provide some financial support for each of the groups to attend professional development as it's needed. So some of the examples are listed there, but we really try to bring as many mental health resources on site to our district so that our mental health staff know of the different agencies and supports that are available community-wide as well if students are in need of additional support.
That is it for the presentation. Any questions?
Scott and then Gina.
It's very interesting. It sounds like we've got a combination of staff and vendors. Are we contracting with these vendors? Are they working for free? Do we pay them a lot of money? What's the deal?
I can speak to that. Yes, anybody who is coming into school and working with any students, we have a contract in place with them, background checks, all of those pieces are in place. Greater Minnesota provides us our therapists at the cost of approximately $5,000 per therapist, which is way less expensive than hiring a staff member. And so they've been very generous with us in that regard. And we have a grant through the local collaborative that pays for that, for the portion of that. And so we're fortunate in that regard as well. But yes, any of the partnerships that we have where people are coming on site to provide services to students, we have those contracts and those all of those other pieces in place. But a lot of our partnerships, as Jen mentioned, are where they're coming in and they're providing professional development to our teams. And in that case, we don't have to necessarily have a contract because most of, I would say pretty much all of them are doing that for no cost.
Okay, I think on Greater Minnesota, they love to get a hold of your insurance information so that they can start billing at their rates.
Yep. Well, co-located therapists, that's a standard practice in co-located therapy in all systems. But the nice thing about Greater Min is, yes, they do bill insurance first, but parents would have to give permission to give that insurance information first. But then we do have about 10% of our 10% of the students that they service do not have insurance, and then Greater Minnesota is picking up that cost as well.
Do we have part-timers, or is this all full-time, or how does that work?
Yeah, Jen probably knows more about which ones are part-time. I think it's a couple.
Yeah, a couple of our schools have 2 part-time individuals who work there, but the other sites, they are currently recruiting for a couple of open sites right now, but the other sites have full-time staff. But like Oak Hill has 2 people who work at that site, and North Discovery also does, and then North is, their numbers are filling up as well, so.
Now, are these primarily licensed school counselors, or do you have such things as a marriage and family therapist, LMFTs, or?
Yeah, they have a variety of licenses. We have a document that lists each of their names and their licenses. If you would like to see that, we could certainly share that as well. Some of them are counselors. They all have therapy or counseling licenses, and some are licensed marriage and family therapists as well. It depends on what they can offer them, if they offer skills training or if they're able to offer therapy, depending on their license.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Gina.
Thank you for sharing all the great work that you're doing. My first question was actually, Scott actually took that, because I was going to ask about billing, because we know health insurance is fun. So I was just curious about how students that are underinsured or don't have insurance, how that works. So thank you for sharing that. The other question I wanted to ask was, is this information and the way to access these services often shared with students and parents or both? Is it shared on a regular basis, or, for example, if we are facing certain current events where the emotions are heightened, are these services shared on a more broad level, or kind of how does that work?
I would say in the past, what we've done is during kind of critical times in the year when we know there's, we're getting close to holidays or breaks where students become kind of anxious and families as well. We do often send out in our newsletters we ask our principals to send out a list of resources, which can include the information for Greater Minnesota and how to access them, but also local or community resources as well. So that's a kind of a standard thing that we've done over the past several years. It's all available on our website as well. But I would say that the 90 mental health professionals or our team does a really nice job of reaching out to families or students that they are identifying as would be a good fit. And just like the video kind of mentioned, in some cases, that counselor, that school counselor, that guidance counselor is that best fit for that particular student. In another situation, it might be the mental health advocate at the school. Some of our students are receiving service minutes through social work, through special education. And so it's really about finding that fit. And I feel like our team does a really good job of communicating the options for our families.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Okay, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Katie Herbold, Executive Director of Innovation Technology Services, will present a second reading on proposed revised Board Policy 624, online instruction.
Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, and members of the board. If you remember back when you saw me a whole bunch in our last meeting, just one time today, we talked about, and we did a first reading of Policy 624, which is our online instruction policy. Just a quick reminder, this policy was rewritten due to the repeal by the Minnesota State Legislature of the Online Learning Option Act, which was originally brought up in 2003, and it was replaced in 2023 with the Online Instruction Act, which led to us needing to rewrite our Policy 624. So I won't put it up on the screen unless anybody has anything they'd like me to go over and highlight again. Otherwise, we had no changes recommended in our last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions? Follow-up? Okay, thank you. That'll come back on the consent agenda then for third reading. Next, we're moving on to reports for tonight. We have Dr. Lori Putnam, our superintendent, doing the superintendent's report.
Thank you so much, Chair Haas, members of the board. Tonight, I would like to recognize Director of Student Services Kate Bukowski, Supervisor of Health Services Jessica Voss, and their entire team for the months-long effort that they led to ensure immunization compliance across the district. Their diligence, collaboration, and persistence certainly paid off. As of January 5, 418 students district-wide were excluded from returning to school due to noncompliance. Today, that number has been reduced to 24 noncompliant students, with an additional 339 students on approved catch-up schedules or with confirmed appointments. So that's super exciting. And we continue to work with the 24 students, but we really think that this significant progress reflects the strength of our systems, the dedication of our staff, and the partnership of our families, and we are deeply grateful to everyone involved in this work. I also want to celebrate student achievement across the district. On Monday at the annual Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at the Rivers Edge Convention Center, 29 of our students were recognized for their exemplary essays, visual art, and spoken word entries. We also have 6 students advancing from the district spelling bee to regional competitions at St. Cloud State University in February. All of these students exemplify our district's commitment, academic excellence, and elevating student voice. And congratulations to all.
Thank you. Then we have Board of Education Standing Committee reports. I believe we have 3. We have Achievement Integration Equity Committee Chair Diana Fenton.
It's being weird. There we go. All right. Thank you, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, members of the board. The Achievement, Integration, and Equity Committee met this morning. Assistant Superintendent Jason Harris presented on the fall activities update. Numbers are steady. We're steady again for fall sports with growing numbers in girls volleyball, music, speech, robotics, and clay target in the high school. And the district continues to look for opportunities for adding growth with, and we had quite a few state qualifiers in the fall sports, which we will hear about in our review at the end of the year. So we are in the midst of our winter sports season now, and we'll have that update later. And then second, we had Kate Bukowski prepare and present the mid-year behavior data. The data from overall, the behavior trends are similar to last year at this point and stable, as reported by Classroom and EduClimber and in Skyward. Our out-of-school and in-school suspensions with students on IEPs continue to trend down, and trend down at a rate that is less over the last 3 years. And overall, our out-of-school suspensions are slightly up, but December and January did trend down. Next steps are to look at the achievement and attendance alongside with the behavior data when we finalize this at the end of the year. And in February, our upcoming agenda items are to talk about our yearly review for the American Indian Education Program and have an update on early childhood education.
Thank you. Then we have Finance and Audit Board Committee Chair, Heather Weems.
We met yesterday, January 20th. We talked about the primary election opt-in. The district has been opted into the primary election system for school board elections for many years. In a general election year, there is minimal cost to the district to participate in the primary election system. However, the board chose to opt out of the primary election system for the special election last November because the district would have had to pay 100% of the cost. If the district decides to opt back into the primary system, the board needs to approve a resolution by April. The committee recommends opting back into the primary election system, and resolution will be brought to the board for approval in November. February. It's like November, that seems late. And then we looked at MDE profiles. Amy Scalarud reviewed the financial profiles for 2023-24, which is the most recent information. The profiles compile information from MDE about our district and other districts we want to compare to, including information on enrollment, student demographics, revenues, and spending per student. It is quite a lot of information, so thank you to her office for putting that together.
Thank you. And then I believe we have one more, Personnel Negotiations Board Committee Chair Natalie Copeland.
Yes, we also met yesterday, January 20th. One thing we talked about was the superintendent evaluation for 25-26. The committee and the superintendent reviewed the plan and schedule for the annual evaluation of the superintendent with a focus on community and board relations. A survey will be sent to board members and identified community partners. The results will be compiled and reported to the committee and the full board in preparation for completion of the annual evaluation. This is the agreed upon timeline. In March, the survey will come out to board members and identified community partners regarding the superintendent's performance related to community relations. And then on May 19th, the Personnel Committee will have a work session to review data and prepare a draft evaluation summary for the board. June 3rd, there will be a closed board meeting for the evaluation of the superintendent, and finally on June 17th, we will make a public report on that annual evaluation of the superintendent. A couple more things. Number 2 was negotiations update. The administration provided an update regarding progress in negotiations with the district's collective bargaining groups. Of the district's 11 bargaining groups, settlements have been reached with 3 groups, and a tentative agreement has been reached with 1 additional group. 2 groups have filed for mediation with the Bureau of Mediation Services. Negotiations with the remaining groups are ongoing and continuing in a positive and productive manner. Finally, number Number 3 was personnel matters. The administration reviewed several personnel matters with the committee. Information regarding these matters is classified as private data under the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Last up tonight, we have future agenda items. The February 4th board meeting work session topics will include operations update, approval of tentative agreements, if any, the 2026-27 middle level course updates, policy readings, and school updates. At this time, does any board member wish to suggest a future agenda item? Okay. That's everything on our agenda tonight. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion by Heather, a second by Natalie. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. It is 8:41 p.m. Have a good night. Thanks for watching. We'll be back February 4th.